Everybody's doing well, I take it. Excited about where we're at right now. It's interesting for an offensive guy. We said going into the season, early in the season, that we were going to lean on our defense, and I think we've got a really outstanding punter kicker in Justin Manton, and congratulate him obviously on being not just the conference player of the week, but several national players of the week, and from a special team standpoint. And we have some really, really good coverage teams, I think, for the most part, and we've really leaned on that, I think. And I'm excited about kind of our defensive effort. I'm excited about some things we got done on offense this last week against a very, very good Troy team. Again, I think early in the season here in particular, if you look at records and you look at stats, you're really getting ready to set yourself up for something. And we try to stay away from that. But again, I'm pleased. Again, it's different for me from where we've been over the last several years to where we were trying to win the game on offense, and we were this freewheeling, aggressive offensive style. And now to play a little bit more passively on offense is a little bit harder to do, but I think it's been the surest way to win for us, and I think that's kind of proved to be true. I'm excited, though, that I think that every week I think Pete becomes a little bit more comfortable. I think our offense becomes a little bit more comfortable, and we've done a great job of taking care of the football, possessing the ball, playing great field position, and I think we can start opening it up a little bit more each and every week, and excited about some of those things. I think that as Alex mentioned, we have a couple players that are injured, and that just means some other guys have to step up. And unfortunately, our right tackle, Chase Region, will also miss this ball game. He just had a death in his family. And I don't know who will be the starter there yet. And we could go with Jeremy Burton, who certainly played a lot of games for us. We could go with Demir Burkett, who used to play out at right tackle and started at right tackle for us for a year. We could certainly go with Frank Sutton, who's one of our up-and-coming redshirt freshmen that we're really excited about. But obviously, if we make that move with Demir outside, then that could mean that Bao Chung or Trey Martin start at left guard, along with Jeremy Burton, who's also played guard for us. So we'll let that thing kind of play out and let there be a little bit of a competition for that position during the course of this week. But other than that, we're relatively healthy. We've got a team, obviously, this week that it's an amazing thing what they've done. It really is remarkable in the sense that they've gone through as many transitions as they have, and to be still as competitive as they are. It's a very, very good football team. Coach Anderson's done a great job with them. And, again, you start thinking in terms of, 4 head coaches and new offensive systems, new defensive system this year, while the system in the past was the same. That's amazing. They played, I think, very, very good football. Obviously, McKissick at receiver is somebody that you have to be majorly concerned about. He's a very, very much a proven player, an athletic guy. Knighton, their quarterback, has done a great job. I think he's a different style of quarterback than, for instance, Applin was. But he is a guy that can beat you with his feet. He can also beat you with his arm, and he's kind of proven that. And then Quashawn Lee at linebacker, they're just they've got some guys that can impact the game pretty dramatically, and again, they're playing well. I know that they're going to be excited about this being the first conference game. I know they're going to be excited because this is homecoming. When I first got here, we were everybody's homecoming. I think we did 5. I could have judged the pageant queens. We'd been in so many homecomings that year. I think our players are excited about getting back out on the road. Someone asked me earlier in the media about, this is your first kind of real road game, and I was like, LSU is really kind of a road game when you go down in that environment. But this team, we're more, I think, sometimes adjusted to play it on the road than we are at home, quite honestly, because we've played so many more on the road than we have at home. And we'll take kind of the next opportunity, and we know that we're going to have a great effort this week in order to have success. Questions?
Looking at the past Arkansas State teams, I know that Coach Anderson, you said yesterday, he's brought in his own offensive scheme, and it's a lot more up-tempo but looking at not having Pickens last week and looking at film and of course Trey kind of came out early there, are you worried about not having your top two corners against what seems to have been in the past a pass-heavy team, or these other guys just from watching film against Troy have stepped up like the Rob Donovan?
Well, no, I mean, it's always disconcerting as the head coach whenever you have players that are injured. You hate it for them, and then obviously there's some impact. But now there's that next man up mentality that everybody has to have. This is a great opportunity for, I think, Ferrando Joseph. Rob Donovan Lewis is already a proven player, and so I don't have any concerns about him. I was really pleased with Ferrando. Ferrando came in for Trey and played, I think, really well. And we also have Junior Williams, who we've moved from safety back to corner. That's, I think, Junior's natural position is there at corner. And so he's another guy that brings some maturity. And then Grant Dotsey was a young man that we were really, really excited about last year. Obviously still excited about him, but he was injured last year, as you recall, and missed the whole season. And now this is an opportunity for Grant to get his feet wet a little bit too. And I'm excited about our talent level in the back end, and those guys will step up. I believe that. And while we hope for those other guys' quick recoveries, we are excited about what we have left.
3 close wins, has it made the team mentally stronger?
Well, I think that any team in college football right now, and particularly at where we're at, which is, outside of that top 25, that you're just not going to walk out there and blow anybody out. They're all going to come down to that. And I think we've talked openly as a football team about that. I think that's a critical component to having success during the course of a season, because there's going to be an awful lot of close games. And there's a minimum talent level that you have to have in order to be competitive. I've certainly been a place where that minimum talent level, we never reached that minimum talent level to be competitive, regardless of how great or how motivated the team is. There's a minimum talent level. But once you reach that minimum talent level, I'm a firm believer that it does start coming down to those intangibles, and part of that is that bonding, that team chemistry, and that belief. I think in 2012, if you go back and you look at that season, how many close ball games that we won during the course of that season. I'm talking about 3 overtimes during that season, plus some other ones that were relatively close. That was critical about that football team is they found those ways to do things. And I think that this team has shown a significant amount of resilience. And as I said in my post-game comments, I'm more excited. This team will go to work. We'll continue to improve because this team will work. But I'm more excited about the way that we've won the games, because I think that what you gain from that is very, very significant. And not just in wins and losses, but in just the way that you play the whole game. And so, I like where we're at there. I think that it certainly brought our team closer together, as you would expect that it would. But I think our team was already kind of built that direction, and that's part of the reason going into the season that I was really excited about this group.
And talking to some of the Arkansas State media, I get this question, and I don't know how to answer it, so I go to the expert. But with your offense, and it seems like every week there's a different look. And this past week, come out early and score, but the running game wasn't there. And then a couple weeks ago the running game was there. Do you feel like it's still? And I know you get this question like every week, like the playbook's going to open up a little bit more. But do you feel like more specifically, they're still finding their identity of this is what we want to do, and we know that we can be confident if we do this that we will win?
I don't think there's any question that going into this last game, it was going to be a run play action game. And I mentioned last week, I think that is our identity. It just so happened that I think in the course of that game, Troy really committed to the run. We hurt them with the run last year. They committed to the run, and thusly those 328 yards we had passing from Pete were almost all play actions. And that's why we were able to go over the top and do some of those things. And I think that is our identity. I think that we know what our identity is. Now, does that mean that we're going to run the football? I've said this multiple times, Tabby, to kind of answer everybody else's question besides, I know you know this. We're going to do whatever it takes to win. We're going to do whatever the surest way to win is. And saying that you're a run team while you might want to establish the run, the reality is that if you're just bound to determine that you're going to continue to slam it up in there against an unblocked guy, that's not. And I know people that do that. I mean, I know that's, they're committed to it, and somebody stops it, and that's fine. I think you have to be able to run the football, and you have to be able to throw the football, and in order to have success. We're just throwing it differently this year than what we have in the past, in the sense that most of that's coming off of play action. And it'll be interesting to see, as you mentioned, how Arkansas State decides to respond to that. And are they going to try to defend the run, or are they going to try to defend the pass? We need to be better at both, just like we need to be better at a lot of things on offense, defense, and the kicking game. And this group will go to work and will continue to strive to get better, I think.
So on the flip side of that, looking at the fifth coach in 5 years for some of these Arkansas State guys, I know that they have a lot of guys back, like you mentioned McKissick and Freddie Knight taking over the offensive nose on the team last year. But do you see, and like Coach Anderson said, it's more like the Hugh Freeze style from 2 years ago instead of like Malzahn. Well, I'm sorry, 3 years ago and 2 years ago. But what are you seeing?
It's hard to keep track.
It really is. Do you see a lot of similarities
Yes.
from like the past teams that you've prepared for?
Yeah, I think that from a defensive standpoint, they kept that same defensive coordinator throughout that whole time frame, John Thompson. And so there wasn't any transition for that group. I think offensively is where you're talking to, and there has been some transitioning, obviously, because everybody's going to put their own mark on the offense. But this is very, very much like Hugh's offense whenever he was there, where Brian Harsin was more like Gus Malzahn's offense. But the thing is those are all spread offenses. They really haven't transitioned that much from a style of play. They're still spread quarterbacks, spread type of thought processes. The offense that we're going to face this week is very, very similar to Troy's last week. For those outside, it's very, very similar.
It's got to be nice to see you guys at the top of the standings, and the fact that you guys have already played a couple games and others haven't.
That's correct. It's this has been a little bit of a different schedule for us this year, and it's one that to have that many home games early in the season, and now we've got to get on to being that road warrior mentality. The type of the games that we've played. And, again, from a statistical standpoint, I think everybody that we played was obviously very, very competitive within us, so we don't have any of those tune-up games to where that can skew your stats and points and all those other things dramatically. Now, again, as I mentioned last week, I think one of the difficulties in that is some of our 2s and 3s haven't played as much football as I would have liked to have seen them play. And we're getting into that run right now, too, where you're going to start having some injuries that are going to pop up, and your depth, it becomes really critical. You would like to have some more game experiences for those guys. But, to be atop the standings, that's great. But, again, that can change pretty dramatically. We just need to focus on being 1-0 this week, and that's, again, our main focus.
With going up against Arkansas State, this is the only team that none of these guys have beaten in the conference.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. And looking at how many guys, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that are from the state of Arkansas, it's like they can already hang their hat on beating the University of Arkansas, but are still looking for that Arkansas State win. Do you feel like that this is, and I hate the word like extra motivation, because I know your team's always motivated to play, but just going back to their home state and maybe playing a team that didn't give them a chance in the recruiting process?
Well, it doesn't mean that they didn't give them a chance in the recruiting process either. Okay, because we have done well in the state of Arkansas in recruiting, and I think that's proven by the players, as you mentioned, that are from the state that are playing for us now and playing at a very high level. I think that there's certainly a little bit of extra motivation. There's no question, in the sense that we've had some really good games against these guys, and we've come up short. And so I think there's always that little bit extra motivation to finish things. We talked about that last week with Troy, and that the Troy seniors had never beat us, and that provides a little extra motivation. And there's certainly some of that, but we're not going to dwell on it. Has it been discussed? Absolutely, because I believe in putting all that stuff out on the table to begin with, all the things that I know that they're going to hear. And now let's get back down to the real work, which is the preparation, in terms of what we need to do this week in order to have a chance to win, and then being fully committed on Saturday to seeing that through. And I think that if you focus on those things more so than streaks, then I think you're in a lot better shape. And as I've mentioned before too, I think one of the great things about college football, because there is such a changeover in personnel, and there's changeover in coaching staff and ideas, and the college game is, I think, so much more dynamic than the NFL because of just all the different structures, the different styles of play that we use in college football. Every year's different. If you get really caught up in, oh, you haven't done this, or oh, you've done this, well, this is a different year. What happened 4 years ago has no bearing on what's going to happen on Saturday, or 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, or even last year. And that's proven over and over again, and yet sometimes everybody gets caught up sometimes in, even I do, because I'm on that coach's poll. I get caught up in my preseason poll about, well, how did everybody finish last year? And, I've already flushed that pretty quickly now, because now you've got a new look at things of this year's teams, and that's really all that matters. And so we're going to focus kind of on the here and now and not worry so much about last year, because that didn't have any bearing on this year's team. Coach Anderson wasn't even there. There's been a lot of changes on their side, and there's been a lot of changes on our side too.
Any advantage for them, the fact they had a bye week last week, and you guys went about it?
Well, as I've mentioned, I think that bye weeks are good sometimes and they're bad sometimes. And so I'll let them kind of make those decisions. I think that, I don't know if they allowed them to get healthier. That's obviously one reason for the bye week. If it allowed them to, I would say this about us. I think we really strive to be different on both sides of the football and to have some uniqueness to us, because I think that there's some, in a short week to prepare, as we do in college and dealing with college athletes that maybe don't have some of the experiences that the NFL guys can kind of look back to, that you're always searching for some differential advantage. And part of that for us is we want to be unique. We want to have some differences to us. I think we lose some of that whenever we play someone that's had an open week. And obviously, as we're moving forward, we have 4 other teams kind of coming up that all have open weeks before us, which is pretty incredible. But we actually addressed this early on with our football team, that we were going to have to make sure that through the course of the season, knowing that people were going to have some extra time to prepare for us, that we could even be more unique this year maybe than other years past, that we had enough things that we did in preseason camp that we could store in the back of our minds, that when knowing that we're going to have to, they've got a little bit more time to prepare for us. And so there needs to be some newness to us this week and as we move forward. And so we tackled that actually in preseason camp, that idea, because obviously it's something that we are going to have to deal with this year, and so we might as well be prepared for it. And I think we've done a good job of preparing our football team for that.
You had mentioned about several times about with Colton, you just kind of let him out there and let him run free, backyard football, and it worked. And going back to sort of the offenses that you've ran in the past, with Pete, do you see yourself as you game plan each and every week, where you go out there and practice and some things just kind of come back to you because of all the years that you have implemented this offense in several different stops? Like, oh yeah, I remember when we did that.
Oh, absolutely. Matter of fact, it happened this morning. There was that kind of, again, structurally, we're a little bit different than what we were with during that Colton Browning area, but no, our offensive structure really has not changed dramatically over a long period of time. Okay, I'm talking about the overall offensive thought. And we were watching some video this morning, and something kind of came up, and it was like, oh, you know what, I did that against BYU, and against this coverage shell, that type of thing. And so certainly there's moments that you have that kind of pop back in your head. And I think that's one of the things, as we talked about Pete last week, and kind of continuing to move forward. With Colton being a 4-year starter, there was things where, hey, you remember 2 years ago when we did this? Oh yeah, and you have that institutional knowledge again that you can kind of fall back on. For Pete, every experience is new, And it's not that Pete can't handle it, because he's done a great job of handling it. But quite honestly, we've limited some of those things, knowing that he doesn't have. We can't reinvent the offense each week for him. While we continue to add a little bit more, because he is a very bright young man, and we take a few more chances because we know there's a little bit more rapport with the receivers. There's no question that everything's much more structured than what it was with Colton. Those guys have played together for a long time, Colton and those receivers, and you could kind of go out there and just kind of make up stuff. Which we did. 2012, right? Game, probably the tying touchdown, that sent us into overtime. Made it up on the sideline. Never run the play a day in our life. And that's what some guys that have played together for a while can do, those kind of things.
So on the flip side of that, with the defense that those guys are playing for a long time, I guess it's kind of a two-part question, because we always joke about this Arkansas Mafia, and then Hunter talked about it in a previous press conference about all these guys from Arkansas and the fact that they played together a long time, but also outside of practice, they're eating together, living together, studying together, all those things. How much does that play into your advantage when these guys are on the field and they're pretty much can look at each other and know what each other's thinking, and it turns into a lot of success over there?
Oh, it's huge. It's everything. As I mentioned, I think every year since I've been here, that part of winning football is playing with mature players. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to play freshmen, because we've proven that we'll do that. But the more mature your football team is, overall, the better you're going to be. And the more they've had an opportunity to grow up in systems as these players have, the better you're going to be. And we were a little bit younger the last couple of years on offense, or probably on defense. And this is the same group, and they're playing great defense. Why? Because they're more confident, they're more mature, and offensively over the last couple of years, we were a little bit more freewheeling and doing some of the other things, because that was the maturity in terms of the team. Is overall, you'd like to get to that point to where you're mature on both sides of the football, but that that you start talking about that, you're talking about a little bit longer than what we've had here in relation to making sure that happens. And I think that's coming. I like our younger players in our program, and I like this opportunity on both sides to kind of grow some guys up. But it takes a little while to create that kind of depth. And then you want it to be consistent to where every year you're just kind of turning out another team, and then just that reload mentality rather than that rebuild. But I totally agree with you that there's a major difference in a football team when they're more mature. And I think that's part of the reason why Arkansas State's had success is they've even though they haven't been in their systems, they've played with juniors and seniors, and they've stayed healthy.
Is that unique for you to see like a type of group? Maybe not unique, because you're spending
Are you talking about the Arkansas Mafia still?
Yeah. Obviously, if you're like playing football and going to battle together all the time, everybody's close. But if you see one, you see like 5 of them.
No, that's true.
Anywhere. No,
that's true. But they're not cliquish. And I think that's one of the things that you have to avoid on football teams is it class, what class they're in, is it what color they are, is it, their demographic. And because I hate those. My players know I hate those. One of the great things about football, and we try to make sure our players understand this, we got the perfect society for 60 minutes. In the sense that it doesn't make any difference what side of the tracks you grew up on, what your color is, who your mama and daddy is, or any of that kind of thing. It just kind of comes down to who you are and how you fit in with the rest of the team. And how cool is that? That's a pretty neat deal. And, I want that, athletics, I think, it's really the window through to all of the prejudices and all that kind of thing, because it dispels all of those. And that's one of the reasons why I think athletics is great for our society as a whole, for any society. Now, getting back, I think that it's great that we have some players that are that close. But I think that they're not cliquish. to where that's the only people that they necessarily associate with, because I think that can be detrimental to a team also. And so they have a lot of fun with it. Our players have a lot of fun with them, taking kind of little jabs at them, I think, along those lines in terms of the Arkansas Mafia group. But it's all in good fun, and like I said, we've got a very, very close team all the way around the board, and I'm very proud of that. It's something that we that doesn't happen out of just luck. I mean, that's something that you have to build within a team, and that's part of the recruiting process. Actually, is looking at some of those things in relation to, how are they going to fit in with the team.
All right, last Mafia question. I'm trying
Okay.
to get off of it. But with the constant going back and forth of Cody Robinson, Michael Johnson, and one guy getting the
Right.
start and everything, and then Michael, having the game that he did this past week. Again, they've always said, like, it's a friendly competition. Like,
Sure.
we're going to both get our playing time, and they both had significant playing time. But that position and just how much it flip-flops, because those guys, both have had some really great performances. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about that? And,
Sure.
and those two guys, again, being both Arkansas guys and real close.
Now, you'd like to, quite honestly, you'd like to have a whole football team of that, to where it's, you've got really good players and it's that close a competition. The one thing that I try to promise the players, they're not necessarily always going to agree with our decisions, but we're going to be as fair as we possibly can be, because the moment that we lose credibility as coaches, then you lose your football team. And part of that credibility, I think, is established by saying, we're going to base it not just off the last week, because obviously, one guy might have a bad day, and that's not his normal consistent performance. The thing with Mike and Cody is it's been very, very close for a long time frame. I mean, it really has been very close, and a lot of it has been injuries more so than anything else that has really not allowed one of them to maybe overtake the other or take it away from the other. And that's unfortunate, but it's part of our game. And I think they recognize that, and we're going to try to be – I love both of them. I mean, they're great young men. I'm proud to have them on the football team in all aspects, not just great students, great leaders, everything. But I want to be as fair as we can to both of them, and in their case, probably more so than some of the other positions on the team, because of their continued progress, consistency, and the closeness of that competition, how that competition's been. Then it does kind of flip game by game, and I think that's I don't think it creates any problems. Obviously, as you mentioned, there's no animosity, and they've been very, very supportive of each other. And it's amazing how sometimes that happens, where you got two guys battling for the same position, and yet they are very close. Colton Brown and Coney Wells, Brayley Brown and Pete Thomas, stuck at the hip. And so Centarius Donald, Tyler Kane, or Jairus Edwards, Centarius Donald. And that's again, that's you want the competition to be stiff, and yet you want it to be a friendly competition too, where each one strives to be better than the other one every day.